Subscribe to the Signature Series Network. Subscribe to the Signature Series Network and unlock the on-demand section for endless entertainment. Gain exclusive access to the Signature Series Travel Club, a treasure trove of discounts and savings. Enjoy up to 60% off on flights, car rentals, theme park and movie tickets, hotels, restaurants, and more. Immerse yourself in a world of incredible deals and discounts, all in one convenient place. Experience the joy of saving money while exploring new destinations and enjoying thrilling adventures. From dream vacations to everyday expenses, the Signature Series Travel Club has you covered. Access exclusive discounts on electronics, countless stores, and a wide range of products and services. All this and more for the incredibly low price of just $5.99 a month. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to save big and indulge in top-notch entertainment. Join the Signature Series Network today and start enjoying the benefits of both unlimited entertainment and incredible savings.
The money.
I had to do this for my wife. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I had no choice.
There's always a choice. I'll be watching.
Sarge? You took down Jimmy Atlas.
This is Action News Update. I'm Peter McElroy. Another sighting of the so-called Batman has been reported, the seventh sighting in just under a month. Witnesses report that the man was dressed as a giant bat.
Yeah.
Gordon and Den are starting a task force. They want me on it. Yeah. See you Monday.
Frank? Is everything okay?
Yeah, babe. It's gonna be okay.
Listen, Frank, you're the best cop I know. Lieutenant Eckhart's dirty, and he's only promoting his own guys. So what about Mr. Gobbs here? Think the bat got him?
There ain't no bat.
Jimmy Atlas. Watch yourself, Sarge. There's some guys don't play around.
When two empires declare war, neither side is innocent.
You're still a traitor, you worthless piece.
We were children, asked to fight an intergalactic war against an enemy we'd never met. Let's stop pretending our side stood on some moral high ground.
What do you want, Rocky?
Where's Tommy?
Tommy Oliver is a ghost. You'll never find him. I don't even know where he is.
Bullshit is an ugly color on you.
I prefer pink.
If dying is what you choose to do here today, I would prefer you did it with your dignity intact.
How soon after the truce did you turn? Did you even wait until we were disbanded?
The second the machine empire integrated their technology in our society, I knew the freedom we bled for was done.
So you stabbed us in the back?
I followed the only rule worth following in this fuckskin. I made sure I was on the winning side, which is why I'm sitting here and you're chained to a chair. Comfortable?
You were never really one of us.
Thank you. The thought that weaponizing youth and training them to kill could have turned out so ugly for so many of them.
We were a team. We fought for each other. You never understood that.
Let's talk about Jason.
What about him?
You were married to him, weren't you?
For 8 hours.
Do you know why they did it?
Got a little tired of being made fun of by you country fucks.
Scully, you sold us out!
Machine Empire had better meth. That was all it took. You know what happens to a dog that chases cars and finally catches one?
It doesn't end well for the dog.
Let's move on to Zach, shall we? Good kid. Fit. A little hyperactive. Do you know where he ended up?
About those hip-hop keto tapes.
Hip-hop keto, that's keto, and abs, knock him out, knee him up, work it, counter and punch, hip-hop keto, let's go.
He knew it was bullshit, but the public ate it up. It wasn't about the money for him. He was addicted to the action. It was his outlet.
And you think peddling false hope to fat kids was enough to scratch that itch for him? Did you know he joined the Machine Empire? Didn't even have to recruit him. So hungry for a battlefield, he volunteered to help us sweep up whatever resistance was left.
Good on me.
아, 너 알아? 네가 그 운동 프로그램에 오이, 어? 깜능이 운동 프로그램 하는 개새끼지?
Change. 그래 이 새끼라. 아메로 우리 힙합 카페 했댔지.
정말 죽여버려! 할 말 있어? 어?
Smart time.
Most people play the odds. But then there's this rare few who don't feel alive unless the odds are stacked completely against them.
I know you get me. It's all good. Get on then.
It's tough, seeing your friends murdered one by one. Especially by one of your own.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Think about it. Rita made Tommy to fight against us. And then he betrayed her, switched sides, Mommy tried to kill him. He lost his power, gained it back, lost it again, only to see a fucking treaty signed? Not bad. I'm glad I'm not his shrink. Say what you want about the machines, at least they're consistent.
What does this have to do with me?
Tommy's always been hung up on you. Yesterday, Tommy paid a visit to Billy Cranston. But don't worry, I think we all know it's unlikely you fucked him, too.
Our alliance with the Machine Empire will bring a new level of synergy within Cranston Lockheed Martin. We will be mass producing our signature Blade Blaster weapons with an initial order of 1.6 trillion euros from the Soviet Union.
Damn it, Billy. What'd you do?
You're out of your mind. Tommy didn't kill any of us. He's a ranger. You just forgot what that means.
Why do you think they gave these powers to kids?
Because we were the only ones who could destroy Rita and her.
You are not that stupid! For fuck's sake! Pull your shit together and start thinking for yourself for once in your life! You're not a little girl anymore. Now where's Tommy?
Go fuck yourself.
You think you're defending something worthwhile. I get that. But technology, the machines, they always win.
I told you I haven't seen Tommy since.
One last warning. Every move we make leaves a footprint.
It's beautiful. While the government was negotiating the treaty, we were burying our own. I saw him for a moment and then he was gone. It's been years.
You're telling the truth. Machines are never wrong. They told us exactly what you'd know.
So you lose.
Oh, Kimmy. You really just don't get it, do you? I never needed you as a witness. You, my dear, are bait.
Kimberly.
No. You're not. I held Kimberly in my arms when she died. So I'm gonna ask you one more time. Who are you?
Kill. Stab. Drown. Sleep. Shoot. remember me, darling. The one who turned you into a ranger in the first place. I've killed them all. And now the world is ours.
Rita.
There's a way to make an entrance.
This is my destiny. It was now a conspiracy of witches.
Download Veely today.
Racism. What is it? Simply put, it's the belief that one race is superior to another. But how big a problem is it? And what are the main factors contributing to racial tensions today? I'm on the streets of London, arguably the city with the most diverse range of cultures found anywhere on this planet, to see what, if anything, can be done to solve this incredible issue.
My name is Aziza Yakin, I'm from Croydon.
My name is Kenya. I've been living in London for the past 17 years.
So my name is Manpreet Singh. I'm 29 years old and I've lived in the UK all my life.
I'm Zach Sallows and I'm currently studying at university in London at the moment, in East London, so I'm living on campus at the moment.
My name is Max. I'm from Hong Kong and I've been in England for 2-3 years roughly.
So my name is Sophia. I'm from London and I'm currently working in HR.
My name is Abinan Abro and I'm from Ivory Coast. I've been living in London since 2001.
I think racism to me is a lack of education and perhaps understanding. And I think where people are scared of something different, To me, it's a very primitive mindset. If something's different, you're kind of fearful of it maybe, or if you don't really understand it. So it's normally easier to mock it if it's different, as opposed to trying to learn and understand the why behind it.
Racism comes in different forms in the sense that there's hidden racism, you could say, where certain barriers can't be breached just because of how things have been placed over time.
For me personally, racism is discrimination or prejudice against a certain person based on their race and excluding them from certain spaces, conversations, areas.
I guess it's just people being rude to people of a specific race. That's as simple as I can boil it down to, really.
Coming from quite a predominantly white background from the West Country, racism doesn't necessarily mean very much to me in terms of my upbringing, but coming then into a more diverse location like London, the last 2 years have been more of an eye-opener in terms of what that diversity actually means to the whole sort of community of London. It doesn't necessarily mean very much to me in terms of the way it would affect me, but in terms of being more accepting of everybody and job roles as well.
I think racism for me is about prejudicing somebody because of the colour of their skin or their race.
Rochin Wood is the Chief Executive Officer of Kick It Out, a 26-year-old organisation that not only champions equality, but also tackles discrimination in football, whether you play, support, or work in it.
For us in Kick It Out, we not only challenge racism, we challenge all forms of discrimination. So we look at sexual orientation, gender, faith as well. So, and that intersectionality that happens between all of those things is important to recognise as well. So we don't put it on its own. We understand it's an intrinsic part of society and intrinsic part of what people define themselves as.
Is racism on the increase? Well, despite the fact that the Americans abolished slavery in 1865, apartheid was abolished in 1994, the United Nations condemned racism in 1966, and indeed the European Union banned it in 2001, it is still around today.
I think that racism is everywhere. I can't measure whether it's on the rise or whether it's on a decline, but I can say that sentiment in England in particular, especially with Brexit going on, has created an atmosphere where people are seeing each other as us versus them.
I think for me personally, it's on the increase. And I think that's in society and I think that's in football as well, because what we do, we work very closely with the police and we work with other organisations that tackle anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, sexism, and we see all of their statistics increasing like our statistics have increased. Now, people can ask you, is that because there's more discrimination or because people are more confident about reporting it? And up to the last couple of years, I would have said that was a difficult question for me to answer because there is an increase in the confidence about reporting. People report now things that maybe 10 years ago they wouldn't have. But for us in Kick It Out, we've seen the last 2 years there be significant increase in all forms of discrimination.
Wouldn't really know, because I live in like one spot and I usually never move from that one spot. I've had like a racist roommate. Every now and then they would like yell racial slurs at people when he's angry. I don't think it's because he's actually like hating against a race. He just finds the worst thing he can say to be angry. It's just him ranting, basically.
I don't necessarily think it is on the increase or even necessarily on the decrease. I think it's becoming more, people are becoming more aware of what we can do to battle it and make it less of a situation.
In my opinion, I've seen a lot more education. So in terms of, for myself, I'm a Sikh, and there's a lot more education with regards to who the Sikhs are, what we represent, why we look the way we look. So in my lifetime, I've seen a lot more increase in education, not just amongst Sikhs, but just around people in general. So I think that's helping.
Obviously, it can become very topical in the news. Like, for example, recently with the England football game, which I was watching, and it was almost quite a sometimes you're aware of situations like that and they can happen, but when it does happen, it can almost raise quite a big eyebrow in terms of what can we do to affect it.
I think it's just always been there in the sense that there's institutional racism still. I think now, obviously, social media is becoming more and more apparent in terms of what happens in areas and places. So I think people becoming more aware that it's happening, as opposed to, I say, like back 10 years ago, where we would call out racism if someone just called out someone on the street. I think there's a different way that people have learned what racism can be now.
So let's just go through all these anti-racial groups. So probably at the top of the list is the Runnymede Trust. Last year was their 50th anniversary, and I believe they were set up or inspired by Martin Luther King. It's headed by Dr. Omar Khan. They are a race equality think tank because they not only are involved with network building, but also they are involved with government and policy decisions. So that's the Runnymede Trust. The next one we contacted has been going for 25 years, and that's the Kick It Out campaign. Now, of course, they are exclusively promoting equality for anybody who watches, plays, and works in football. They're anxious for various football organizations, whether it be professional, semi-professional, or grassroots, to report any racist slurs on the pitch. So that's their modus operandi. Then we look at an organization called FAIR, which stands for the Forum Against Islamophobia and Racism. They were formed in 2001. All these organizations, by the way, are charities, so they rely on donations. Now, therefore, promoting culturism across all races, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, all these organizations, they champion equality, and we shall see if we're able to get some information from them.
I don't necessarily think they fuel the racist slurs, but I do think they fuel negative propaganda towards it in terms of the limelight of people's culture as such.
Some people would argue that both the media and social media are to blame for racial tensions. Arguably, if TV crews didn't report on Islamic State, they wouldn't be as famous as what they are. In 1994, the book The Bell Curve caught a controversy because it argued that white people or Caucasian people were more intelligent than the black community. And indeed, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists say that of every 12,000 news stories, only 1% pertain to Latinos, and of that, 80% of those stories are negative.
In terms of the media, I would say perhaps not. I think there's more of an effort to include people from sort of diverse backgrounds. I'm certainly seeing that there's a lot more inclusion, so I think that's helping to battle it. If you look on TV, there's people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, and it's becoming more representative of the world we live in.
I don't think social media is to blame. I don't think I would challenge social media that there's much more for them to do, because because we're a reporting bureau, you can report any form of discrimination to us if you see it or hear it in a game, but we also pick up social media discrimination, and what we see on that is much more virulent, much more targeted discrimination because of the anonymity of the people posting it. Now, we would challenge Twitter and Facebook and all the social media providers that they must do more to address that. And it's a complex issue, and understand that, and you have to work with people like the CPS, the police as well. So we're trying to bring all of those bodies together with the football bodies to say, enough's enough now. And we've been reporting this for the last, I'd say 5 years anyway, but saying you have to take more of a stand. Social media has to take more of a stand because there is just such an increase in it.
Racism has always been there. Social media only brought it up. Do you understand? Before in the past, when things like this happened, because there were no social media, so things were like kind of, people didn't know about it. Do you understand? Now with social media, every single thing is out there. So it's not because social media increases the problem, but social media brought the problem to light.
Yes, it's created a whole polarization in terms of some people are so extreme with their views, and then you have people who are the complete opposite as well. So I think because people are hidden behind screens, they can talk about whatever they want because there's no face-to-face contact, so it makes it easier.
In terms of social media, I think people are broadening their horizons. So with social media comes people blogging about travel and countries they've been to, and societies that they've lived with and what they've learned from, and that leads into the education side of things. You open your world up to really what's out there, and personally I think it's broadening people's horizons.
Social media is one of those difficult things because it's not very specific in terms of Instagram, for example. It doesn't matter what culture you're from. If anything, people are very excited about where you come from, what you do, how you experience your life, and how you're presenting that to everybody. So I don't think there's any problems on social media in terms of colour at all, or especially culture.
I think they do. I think social media in itself fuels racial stereotypes of particular racial groups. For example, like black people like eating chicken or watermelon, or that white people wear chinos and loafers. These things are not necessarily the correct ways of displaying or portraying races. I think we need to become more real about one another, because at the end of the day we're all humans, and we need to show that I'm the same as you, you're the same as me.
I think that we shouldn't be harsh on social media. At least they try to put to our attention that there's a problem, so people need to do something about it. Yeah, that's how I say things.
If it's in society, it'll be in football. Football's not distinct from society. It reflects what's going on inside society. If you look at any home office or you look at police records, they'll tell you that there's a rise in hate crime throughout society. And football's just a reflection of that. However, for me, football's got an opportunity to lead. It could lead on this, about how to tackle all forms of discrimination. And do I think that football is different now than it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago? Yes, I do. I don't think we've got it solved now, but I think it's much better. If you ask people who went to a game 25, 30 years ago and who go now, will they tell you significantly different? And they will tell you it's significantly different, apart from maybe grassroots.
I think in terms of sport, because it's more publicised, we're seeing it in terms of a spotlight, so there's more of an increased spotlight towards it. So we think that there's a lot of racism that happens in sport, but I think it's in all different areas and all different industries. I mean, you can experience racism just by walking down a park, or you can do it when you're running 100 meters on a race and you won, and then people say, oh, he cheated, or she's actually a man, there's just the different things like that.
I think it's kind of quite general, I guess. I think as a black person living in England, I don't know if you can really escape it, no matter where you are in life.
I think racism is prevalent in all walks of life, and especially heightened in places where you're in a minority. I think that when you're one of a few, many people don't really understand where you're coming from because they've never been in your shoes, they've never experienced your experiences. But I think in sports it's heightened even more because of the fact that you're on a platform that is exposed. You're giving yourself exposure to a lot of eyes, and these eyes may not necessarily be used to seeing you in these areas. So, for example, in football, I saw the other day there was a man, I can't remember his name, but he was a famous footballer, and they were calling him a monkey after he scored a goal. I think things like that kind of show how much racism has kind of permeated the norm and made it the norm to just target people from minorities.
It's everywhere, really, but in competitive things in general, people just get more angry and vitriolic, like they just be more loud about just being angry the other side. It doesn't have to be like a race or whatever, they're just angry.
Do these security services, and in particular the police, unfairly target ethnic minorities? Well, in the United Kingdom, 60% of British African citizens have been abused on at least one occasion. And in 1998, in the United States, of 4,468 crimes reported to the police, 2,901 came from African Americans.
I don't think stop and search will ever be phased out, but I think that more police being visible on the streets is a good thing. I think even better, more ethnic minorities within the police force is amazing, because it means that even if stop and search does continue on, ethnic minorities may be more trusting of the police and may not think that there's an ulterior motive going on, or, like I said before, an us versus them narrative that kind of permeates media. I mean, I always think when I'm reading the papers on the tube that why is it that every week, even though stop and search continues, why is it that we keep getting young black men dying from stabbings and things like that? I think if there were more ethnic minority policemen visible on the streets, it won't solve all, but it would do a great way in bridging the gap between the us versus them.
Well, you're asking a Catholic from Northern Ireland, so I would have a view on that now. I don't really think that stop and search is a terribly effective mechanism. It wasn't effective, I don't think, in Northern Ireland, and I don't think it's been terribly effective here either. I recognise the police have a hard job. I worked for the Met for a while. I recognise that, but I think for me, it's much more about the police understanding the local communities they serve, and that for them to be reflective of the local communities they serve. Because that local intelligence, that trust in the police can only be built by a lot of hard groundwork, and that takes time. And things like the Safer Neighbourhoods initiatives and community policing, it takes time to build up that trust from communities that maybe have historically not engaged with the police. And I know that from growing up myself in Northern Ireland, that, would we have engaged with the police? Would I have engaged with the police when I was growing up? No, I wouldn't have done. So it takes challenge to ourselves, and the police need to completely always be challenged themselves as how do we have communities, how do we increase the trust the communities have in us?
I think there's two sides to the coin. I get the side from the people that are affected. Let's just take stop and search, for example. I get how someone could be upset by being stopped and searched because they look a certain way, and I can get how they could be upset. But then if you look on the flip side of things, the police, the people that are carrying these stop and searches out, they are doing it for our safety, for the safety of the public. Now, if statistics show that there are certain minorities committing more, let's just say, knife crime than other minorities, then I think the police are well within their right to look at those minorities and try to, not just those minorities obviously, but if the stats back them up, then they're well within their right to stop and search those people, because they're just trying to do their job. And I think everyone just needs to be a bit more understanding of why these things exist, and just trying to be a bit more cooperative. If I was stopped and searched, my first reaction wouldn't be to react in a negative way and go on the defensive about why I'm being stopped. These people are just out there to do their job. They're just trying to make our streets safer, and if I can help them do that and make their life a bit easier, then I will do.
I do understand that, and I see that. I work in court, so going into court, there's a difference if it's a person of colour. Sometimes you see that security cars will double check, or when you're travelling on a flight, if the scanner beeps suddenly, they'll get randomly checked. But I think it's just because media has publicised it so much that if it's a certain race, the race is immediately put out there. That it's this guy from this country, and then everyone becomes aware, oh, these kind of people start generalising, it's a bad thing. Not gonna lie, it's easier being a white man to go through security compared to a guy who's a person of colour, just because of the connotations of it, really. And I've witnessed it myself in terms of things. My dad, I see it, and my mum. So I guess that's just how it is.
Yeah, I've been like stop and search like a few times, like a handful of times, and yeah, obviously I think they do they do. Any black people that would stop and search them, I've been stop and searched even in LSC, which is like a high middle class place. I've been stop and searched there.
You hear quite a lot of America's problems and the sort of stereotypical way in which they treat black people when it comes to crime and how they would treat white people differently to how they treat black people. But like I said, it's one of those things that you wouldn't understand fully until you're either there to experience it or see it for yourself.
I think from personal experience, I've dealt with the police in my own personal settings due to some issues I won't go into, and the way I've been treated by the police has not been any different from the way I've seen them treat any other race. I think that the police are doing a good job in trying to be more pragmatic in the way they kind of treat everyone. But I hear things about the stop and search, and I cannot say that it's not racist because the very nature of it from the beginning was racial. The sus laws that came out that kind of stopped and searched black individuals back in the 1960s have still not been removed from the policies that are going on right now. So I can't say that they're not racist, but I know that they are doing a lot to treat people, everyone, the same.
Okay, I've read a lot of story about this. Even this singer Jamelia, I don't know if you know her. Yeah, she said that she was stopped by police. Why for her, she didn't do anything wrong. So things like this I heard a lot in the news, in a newspaper and on TV. That there's a certain of black and Asian and people they get stopped by police. Only okay, I won't say for the sake of it, but compared to other white people, they get stopped way too much. Don't understand? So I think as far as I'm concerned, I remember once I was going home, it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and then there was a police car behind me I didn't know. When I turned back and then I saw the police car, so they were asking me if I was living around. I said, yes, I live around, this is my house. I said, okay, if your house, so try to open the door. And then I got my key out, I opened the door, and then they knew that, okay, then that was really my house. And then they left. So personally, I didn't experience any racism things, to be honest with you. But I've read a lot in the newspaper and on TV. I've seen a lot of things, hear stories. So yeah, that's what I can say.
I think the Met, like most police forces, recognise now that they have to have a diverse workforce, that they have to have, if you're going to have that trust, they can't. Northern Ireland came through it as well to make sure that there's many more Catholics come into the PSNI because of that disconnect with the Catholic community and the nationalist community. So I would imagine that most police forces would recognise that and want to make sure that their workforce is diverse as possible so that they can have the maximum impact on what they're doing.
Some people would argue that the colour of one's skin can affect one's career and job prospects. While worldwide employers are supposed to abide by anti-racial laws, in the US, Austal, who build ships for the Navy, refused to acknowledge responsibility for racial slurs aimed at one of their employees, Ron Law. And indeed, the US bank JP Morgan had to pay out $19.5 million to 6 of their employees to avoid a discrimination case. In the UK, The Independent reported that at least 25% of the UK workforce has been subjected to some form of discrimination.
Initially, when people interview you and they maybe see your CV and they see your first name and it's an English name and then they see your second name and they don't quite know where it's coming from, that can be a little bit of a barrier because the person doesn't necessarily trust you. They may have unconscious bias going on in the sense that they may not know who you are, what background you're coming from. But I think in the workplace in particular, I don't think it's a barrier. I mean, your work is your work and what you do should definitely represent who you are and your work ethic and your education and your background and the sort of things that you know how to do your job. So I don't think that racism is a barrier in the workplace, but getting into the workplace and into certain spaces, it may be a barrier.
The subject that I'm looking to more go into is more property development and architecture. So, which has always mainly been quite almost a white person's background. It's been very upper class. So now they are making almost huge steps in terms of how can we integrate everybody regardless of their backgrounds, their cultures, their skin colour.
I've worked in football for 10 years now, and I think if you look at football as a career, as an industry, if you look at the diversity at the entry level, it's getting much better. But if you progress up through football, you won't see that diversity. You certainly won't see it from a colour point of view, and you won't see it from a gender point of view, or a disability, or sexual orientation, as much as you can tell. But and you look at the boardrooms, like I spent a lot of time traveling around a lot of football clubs, you will not see that diversity there. So what's stopping? And also if you look at, the constant debate we have about the lack of black managers in the game, if you compare it to the fact that 32% of players are from an ethnic minority background, and you've got 3-4 black managers in the game, or coaches. If you go into an academy, you won't see that diversity in the academy system. In regard to the staffing of an academy, you'll see it in the diversity of the young players, but you won't see it there. So you'd have to say what's the breakdown that you can leap from here to there, because a lot of coaches and managers are ex-players. So from that point of view, I think that there is definitely an issue. And we run a mentoring leadership program to try and get young, diverse people into the business of football, because it can be quite a closed industry. It can be just, and it's difficult to navigate around it as well. And my team are very diverse. I'm very lucky that way. And they will tell you that many of them have been racially abused, both at grassroots level and going about their daily work. And also there's that sort of hidden discrimination that nobody really talks about, where they may not be openly saying something to you, but you know what they're doing, and that unconscious bias around that.
Actually, no, I don't. I think there is a problem with promotion. I think, especially in the financial sector, I've heard from my friends who work there that they get pigeonholed. So they rise up into a certain level, mid-managerial positions. They never get to that director level, even though they have the same experience, even more than their white or Asian or Indian counterparts. So I think that in terms of racism, it's something that needs to be kind of looked at. Why is it that so many people on board level are not representative of the population that we live in? Why is it that there's only certain types of people in senior management or senior positions?
It's not something that I've suffered from myself, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I work in the construction industry, so things such as going to site and being able not to wear a hard hat, for example, because practicing Sikhs are protected by law in order to do so. So I'm very different compared to, I guess, the majority of people who work in the construction industry, but that I don't feel like that's affected my personal prospects with regards to getting a job.
I think I've been quite lucky in a sense of working in an office environment. It wasn't big. I didn't really grow up thinking, oh, the colour of my skin is going to affect how I'm going to get job prospects. But I do understand that there are certain barriers that some people, it depends on your experience, I guess. Growing up in a community where the colour of your skin had an impact in terms of what you had in terms of access to things. So would make a difference on how you would then view, oh, what can I access? Will I actually be able to step foot in terms of certain places because I feel like I'm not welcome there, or I'm not. In terms of, for me, I think I haven't really felt like, oh, I can't go to step foot in an office just because of my skin. I can only speak for myself, really.
The only thing that I can say is they have to try to be fair a bit, you understand? If, for instance, you want to promote someone, you need to, It has to be based on their experience and their skill. Do you understand? Before promoting, because if you promote somebody because you know that it's not up to the job, or you try to favor him compared to somebody who has more skill, it's not fair, and it's not right.
We have that. I mean, we've got the Equality Act, and we have the protected characteristics. We have positive action. So we have all of those things that are in place, that have been in place for quite a while. To me, it's about also the employer. You know, how do you make sure that the opportunities you're offering to a diverse set of people? How do you build diversity into your business, not as a tick box exercise, but how do you make it a core element of every single bit of your business, so you don't think about it anymore? It's just central to what you do, because the research will show you a diverse team is usually much more productive, much more creative part of your organization. So how do you make sure you have more women? How do you make sure that as you go up the ranks of any sort of business, that there's opportunities for underrepresented people in your business to get to where they fulfill their potential, because then make sure that your board is diverse, because if you don't have it from the top, it doesn't come down. So you must have equality champions at that level for it to have an impact all throughout your business. So I think it's very much down to the employers.
I have, like, not often though, like maybe it's like twice, if someone's especially, called me like the N-word essentially. Right. But yeah, I think that's quite rare. I think nowadays, definitely like my generation. So yeah, I'd say it's quite rare.
Last year, whilst playing for the university football team, obviously from London is definitely a mixed race team, and one of the players unfortunately was in a situation in which he was racistly slurred towards, and it became more of a difficult situation in which it was handled, because obviously when it becomes from the sort of lower level, when it's just university football, whether or not it's that level or even up to the England standard, it's still the same procedures that have to go by. But it felt for us as if it had got slipped between the fingers a little bit of the people of obviously hierarchy that have to deal with those situations, and possibly then it goes back to what you were saying about then the media.
I mean, I went to uni up north, so very different in terms of, cultural differences, you could say. And I did geography in uni, so it was mainly white people, you could say. So in a classroom, there was about 10 people of colour out of 400 kids on the course. So I guess that's very different. A lot of people would ask if I was an international student in the beginning, but I mean, you can't really blame them. I think you have to assess it based on the situation, because some people, it's harmless, I guess you could say, and others, when people are trying to do it in the wrong way.
My wife is from Poland, and the first time she said to her mom that she's gonna do her life with a black man, she didn't like it. She even asked her to stop it, but she has to, she said no. And it wasn't easy on her. With time, she wasn't talking with her mom so much because of this. And when we had our first child, her mom has to maybe try to calm down a bit. And so far, things tend to be a bit normal, do you understand? And I've been to Poland as well, but I didn't meet her mom because she was living far from the town. But people were looking at me a lot. I remember one day we went to a restaurant, but people were looking at me a lot. But I guess this kind of normal. I was a bit scared, because of the way people were looking at me. So even my wife as well, she was a bit scared. She even told me that we would never go live in Poland because of the rate of racism is way too much compared to UK. So I was okay, but at the same time, no scares like somebody will attack me. But I was try to to say, okay, what's going to happen, because it was my first time in Poland. But at the end it was okay.
Does racism pervade all walks of life, or is it just in certain industries such as sport where the problem lies? Just talking about sport, even non-contact sports like golf, Tiger Woods, who is arguably one of the world's greatest ever golfers, has reported racial discrimination in his time.
England's Euro 2020 qualifying match against Bulgaria in Sofia was overshadowed by racism from home fans. As a result, the referee stopped play twice in the first half.
I mean, again, the England-Bulgaria game set precedent as well because they evoked the UEFA three-step protocol. And even though they didn't get to stage 3, or they got to sort of stage 2, and we have to commend Gareth Southgate and the players for the way that they conducted themselves, the dignity they did. But my point is different than that because I don't think it should be down to them to have to call that. I think it's down to UEFA League. UEFA knew there was going to be, we all knew there was going to be a problem with England-Bulgaria. You know, so all my team are watching it, almost drafting statements as it's going out. So if you know there's a problem, when Tyrone Minks was warming up, he heard monkey chanting. Now, if he heard it in his pitch, the UEFA officials heard it. So if the UEFA officials heard it, why did they not stop the game before it started? Or why did they not make that decision? Why it shouldn't be down to Gareth Southgate and his players, and we're absolute total fans of what he did, but it shouldn't be down. It should be down to UEFA. And when the subsequent ban and sanction that they give in Bulgaria, I don't think are good enough. You know, a 2-match ban, 1 suspended, and €75,000 fine. What is the point of that? Or how are you going to educate those fans? And not all Bulgarian fans are like that. But again, when you see those guys come in, I think anybody would have been not naive not to know what they were there for. You know, it was clear, and they walked out, and there was no sanction. Now my question is why? Why is that? And if you knew these guys were connected to a far-right group, which they seem to have done, why let them into the stadium in the first place?
Haringey, which was only 4 or 5 days later than the game between England and Bulgaria, they actually took the bull by the horns and walked off the pitch, suspended the game because of racial taunts to some of their players.
Well, much as I'd love to get into the mind of a racist football fan, it's a difficult one for me to answer. My personal view is no. And the reason why I think that is because the worst thing you can do to So it's a different, you have to always have that sort of menu of how to report, because one way doesn't fit all. And you may not be comfortable reporting to the police. You may not be able to find a police officer to report to, and so therefore the point you're making is a young, technically savvy people, not necessarily, because we say you can also.
And my brother was amazing in tennis. At one point, at 13, I think he was like number 2 or 3. Man, I think number 1 at one time in the whole world, not
That's
United
crazy.
States.
That's
the world.
crazy.
So he was. I remember meeting Iverson, T Mac. I remember going to Donald Trump's house. Cause he didn't sign with Reebok because my parents didn't let him sign because they wanted him to still go to college.
Yeah.
But he was amazing in tennis. I think it was my parents pushed him a little too hard. So I was joking about it, but if whatever my kid want to do, he gonna do. I don't want him twerking and then.
Come on, bro. Come on, bro.
I mean, if he a real good twerker, I'd support him. But I would like for my child.
We love supporting parents. That's real though. That's real. That's real.
I would like for my child to hoop.
Yeah.
Play football, play baseball, even play tennis or something. But I don't know how good he's gonna be. About 6'5". You see how big his mom is.
Yeah. You gonna have a big one on
no
your
way.
hands. You gotta league him now. Ain't no way.
God's gonna give him some gifts. I want him to use them in the right way. But I'm supporting whatever he do. But I'm gonna push him. I want him to be the best in whatever he wants to be.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna push him towards what I see that he's capable of doing. So to answer that question,
Yeah. He gonna play. That's a short answer.
It's a tough question.
And then our closing remarks, we always end the same way. I give you 5 shots from half court. You gotta make one for $1 million. If you miss all 5, you go to jail for 30 years. Would you take that deal or would you cap out?
What prison we talking? We talking prison?
We talking about Rikers.
Rikers. Not Rikers. Maybe somewhere else.
Nah. We not talking about Padrone. We talking about Rikers. You get.
Not Lake Lada, but something.
No. We not talking about gun club. We talking about Rikers.
I'm talking about gun club. Like, I don't want to be there with all them niggas.
That's what I'm saying though. So.
I know all of them. There's no way out there.
So 5 shots. I mean,
probably
5 shots to take them for $1 million.
I'm just saying. But I mean,
that's the point. I mean, shout out to the call for the Black Stella too. That was a good call right there. So you taking the deal off the drink or not?
I take it. I would take it.
All right, bet. We gonna see what it is. You gotta make it at 5, bro. You gotta make it at 5. That's the only rule. All right, first one. Oh shoot, that look good. All right, 0 for 1. Oh! All right. Uh-oh.
Dang,
You got 2 more.
He throwing them out too fast.
You got 2 more, bro. You got 2 more. Oh! This is pressure right here.
There we go. There we go. Woo! I hit it in 3. That was 6 or 7.
That was 4. That was 4. That was 4. Shout out to that one. That was 4.
That was 4. God, I ain't expecting him to pass it up that fast. That's what messed me up.
So we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thank you. We're excited for this first season. Like I said, this first season is all about local love. So we're gonna talk to a lot of South Florida cats, a lot of people just that we grew up seeing. You know, I feel like everybody had not even just role models, but people that you respected around your own neighborhood, around your own community and things like that. Once again, follow the Instagram unrestricted FA_pod and follow the Twitter unrestricted FA1. Please like, subscribe on YouTube and things like that. We try to get these videos out whenever we can. For the call to action, we always say, do something. I feel like, this week, especially with everything going on, I feel like we have a lot of turmoil around the world with the crisis, the border crisis, with the Haitians and things like that. Just please go out there and do something nice in your community. I feel like we lack empathy as people a lot, especially nowadays and things like that. So, you know, volunteer. There's a lot of food banks around, you know, the county, wherever you're from. Please donate, give your time, give your money, you know, and just give empathy and show love to those who need it, because, you know, the whole world is hurting as usual. And we actually have some important news. We have a really good sponsor message this week. The first one, so I don't mess this up, I'm going to read it. We're happy to announce that we're going to be featured on the Signature Series Network on Roku TV, Fire TV, and Apple TV, as well as Blaze It Up Radio. We're also going to give a shout out to Jimbo. Really good dude. His name is Devon Oakley, connected with me. It's pretty much like an Airbnb app for gyms. So gyms, personal training, I know this is big because, especially with COVID, everything, last summer there was a lot of people hitting me up, you know, a lot of, you know, overseas athletes, things like that, just asking for gym space and things like that. And, you know, the normal gyms are closed. And so this is kind of Airbnb for athletes. It's called Jimbo. Please tap in if you haven't yet, or if you don't know what they're talking about. They're right now based in North Carolina and Atlanta, but they're trying to expand. I know I had a great conversation. I feel like they do amazing in the South Florida market. But please follow them. Same thing, they have an app already up and running. You can apply for gym space, things like that. Same thing, book your reservations. You can list your facility and everything like that. So once again, appreciate you guys for tuning in, and see you guys next time.
All right.
Ew. He said nice cold beer. Oh, bro, he was sicko, dog.
I'm classy with wine and cheese.
like 10, 15, if that. I'm going. I'll be in jail.
Cassell drops back. Shaw can't find anyone. Anderson turning and fires for three and hits.
Nelson Nick Anderson, born January 20th, 1968. The 94-95 Orlando Magic season. I was just about to speak on this team as a whole for the amazing trajectory they had at one point to losing it all in what seemed like a blink of an eye. Had things go different that year, Shaquille O'Neal may just have retired a Magic with possibly multiple championships. He left after the next season. But then I stumbled on another story, one more relatable, more important to not just the players, but the organization as a whole, affected by 4 straight missed calculations. And one more personal. Yes, I've been there before, like I'm sure many have. Game on the line, missed. The story of Nick Anderson. What intrigued me most about this story was the admitted mental effect it had on the player ever since that saw his chances at the player he could have been expire just as time did at the end of that last finals game for the 95 Orlando Magic being swept by the Houston Rockets. Just one of those missed shots could have won the game, and who knows, maybe even give the team the momentum needed to defeat Houston in a 90s era where winning championships were tough to come by. Nick Anderson stated himself that he's never really been the same since, and it showed in his free throw shooting and production in general in the years after. Anderson was on the verge of becoming a star in Orlando, and the Magic, with the addition of Penny Hardaway in just his second year with Shaquille O'Neal, made it to the NBA Finals after having missed the playoffs altogether in Nick Anderson's first 4 years. He was the best player in his state in high school, parade and McDonald's All-American, star freshman, and all-conference sophomore, to being good enough to leave school early and enter the NBA draft, taken 11th overall. Entering the NBA, Nick was thought to be the perfect shooting guard for the new era. 6'6", great footwork, athletic, could play high-level defense, and when he finally got his three-point shot to fall in the league, he was on path to becoming one of the best in that area as well. That very 94-95 season, he shot a career-high 41% from three. That declined every year after. What happened to Nick Anderson, who should have been one of the greatest shooting guards of the 90s era? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Nick Anderson was a 6'6" shooting guard from Chicago, Illinois that averaged 19 points as a sophomore and 28 by his second varsity year. After transferring to famed Simeon by his senior year, he was being named Mr. Basketball for the state of Illinois and one of the top-rated prospects leaving high school. He chose to stay in-state with Illinois, where he took his team to the second round as a freshman and leading scorer, to the Final Four as a sophomore, averaging 18 points, 8 rebounds before deciding to leave early for the NBA draft. He became the 11th and first ever pick for the expansion Orlando Magic and expected to be their cornerstone to a championship shooting guard going forward. Stunt number 1, the 4 missed attempts. In his first season with the Magic, Nick Anderson looked promising on both ends. He played in all but one game and was very productive in his 22 minutes a game, averaging 11.5 points, shooting almost 50% from the field and 70% from the foul line. Below average for an NBA shooting guard? Yeah, I know. Many speak about the isolated missed free throws in Game 1 of the '95 finals, but if you look a little deeper, Nick Anderson had always struggled from the foul line going back to his college days, shooting just 65% for his career. Of course, as a seasoned player in the league by his only NBA finals in '95, you would expect him to have lived those demons down, but such wasn't the case. Fact is, those were special free throws, because it was those that turned Nick Anderson into a mental wreck for the rest of his career, and just may have been the reason the early 90s Orlando Magic lost an opportunity to really make magic and history. By just Nick Anderson's third year, he was a borderline all-star. He had become more confident shooting the NBA 3, and his points ballooned to almost 20 points a game, along with 6 rebounds and nearly 2 steals. He shot a career high from the free throw line the next season, 92-93. Of course, Penny Hardaway arrived in Orlando 93-94, and along with Shaquille O'Neal, took over as the faces of the team. But Nick was still a very important third option by 94-95. He shot 70% for just the third time in 6 years, and what would be his last. The Magic won 57 games that season and were first in their division, and also defeated Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the famed Last Dance-worthy semifinals of the Eastern Conference. Nick Anderson was the guy that stole the ball from MJ, and later said MJ wasn't the same in number 45 as 23. The Magic made it all the way to the NBA Finals, and Nick was playing solid throughout. 14 points a game, shooting 38% from 3, and 70% going into Game 1 against the Rockets and home court advantage. The Magic were leading 110-107 when Robert Horry fouled Anderson with 8.5 seconds to go. 1 makes it really difficult. 2 seals the deal for Orlando. He missed both and got his own rebound, only to step up and miss another pair. Kenny Smith would come down and hit a clutch three-pointer to tie the game and send it to overtime. Orlando never recovered and were swept in the series. Brian Hill, the coach that year, later stated that the guys were broken after that game and never got back to who they were. Nick Anderson described himself as a dog with no bite to his bark for the rest of his career. Stunt number 2, the rest of his career. Confidence. It's the one thing a successful basketball player has to find a way to develop at some point over the course of his career. Nick Anderson feeling that way about himself is something we found out in hindsight, but to know those free throws had that big of an impact on him personally is eye-opening to how serious the mental aspects of the game can get for some. For one like Nick Anderson, it was literally the defining moment of his career, and probably the clearest defining moment I've seen from a professional athlete. Nick became a free agent after the season, and in negotiation, the Orlando Magic incentivized his contract, requiring him to attempt at least 3 free throws a game to receive said contract in full. That pressure mentally made him shy away from the foul line and saw a steep decline in his percentages in the years to come. He'd often call on other guys to shoot technicals and not seem to want the ball in late game situations. He'd play 4 more seasons with the Magic, never making it past the first round since Shaq left after the 95-96 season. Orlando would lose in the first round, miss the playoffs, and lose in the first round again in Nick Anderson's final season with the team before he was traded to Sacramento for the 99-2000 season. He shot as low as 40% from the line in 96-97 and was a frame of what he could have been since the missed free throws. Stunt number 3. There really was no third growth stunt for Nick Anderson. He was a good player that had great potential as an amateur, worked on his skills to the point he was considered an elite prospect leaving college, and selected high in the draft with great expectations. But like mentioned, you have to be mentally prepared to handle the stages Nick Anderson saw playing with 2 great players. Before he and the Magic were expected to do great things, he played almost all-star level. When the expectation grew, Nick Anderson shrank and is not afraid to admit that confidence-wise he just didn't have it. He was still a very solid player that could have been used on a contending team as a 3rd or 4th option. But then again, mentally, with what he was going through, how do you trust him in that situation? Reminds me of Mitch Richmond as the career that could have been for Anderson, even with the missed free throws. Mentally, it was just never meant to be. Salute to Nick, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.
At this point, I don't care about that man, honestly. He does whatever he wants. Our job is not to babysit somebody.
I didn't think he wanted to do what everybody else was doing. Just told him he should leave then. Every single moment, I'm going to give Ben a chance to join the team.
I don't really care. I have nothing to say. One thing I'll say is that, since he's been back, nothing has really changed.
Trust the process, a mantra that began under Philadelphia GM Sam Hinkie in 2013. Has the process been processed, and what's to be made of it? It's closing fast on a decade of Philadelphia, along with NBA fans in general trusting those words in hopes at some point they wouldn't have to use them any longer. Well, maybe now they don't, but not for the reasons they expected. What that was is the team by now would be in championship contending position with pillars in place to carry the organization into the foreseeable future. Believe it or not, that partially happened. The Sixers did become the #1 seed in the East in last year's playoffs. They were in championship contention, or so it seemed before the playoffs began, and finally fans could sigh in relief that the process yielded results. But we saw how that eventually played out with the 5th-seeded Atlanta Hawks, who no one expected to beat them, eliminate Philly in 7 games to go on to the Western Conference Finals. But that was just the start of it. We all also saw their pillars completely cave in, with Embiid understandably going down or limping through injury, and Ben Simmons losing all his superpowers on the floor and even more mentally. So much so that he refused to shoot the ball even for an uncontested 100% success graded layup to tie the game late in a Game 7 to take them to the conference finals. But it gets deeper. Games before that, Ben Simmons began to get and hear questions not only about his game, but his long-term stay on the team and whether or not he was even good enough to win a championship at point guard. Fair questions for an all-star player that was having the playoff Simmons was up to that point. A guy that made 3 field goals in the 7 fourth quarters for the series and basically unplayable down the stretch due to his shooting woes from all 3 levels. But what Ben didn't expect was the distrust and unsettlement coming from people in his organization and his own locker room, so here we are today. Ben Simmons has requested a trade with multiple years still on his contract, and he's forcing his way out. He's missed all training camp, practices with a phone in his pocket now, and has been reportedly kicked out of the last practice, with Joel Embiid having this to say.
At this point, I don't care about that man, honestly. He does whatever he wants. Our job is not to babysit somebody.
The process is going to need all the trust it can get right now, because it's hard to see what's going on and believe that this is just another step in said process. One that for sure won't have their pillar, that is their former number 1 pick Ben Simmons. Here's what went wrong and why the process has been processed. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Like mentioned, the process started under Sam Hinkie, who took over as GM for the Sixers in 2013, becoming the 3rd GM since the team was newly bought in 2011. He encouraged fans to allow the team time to build after the Iverson era and trust that 10 years from now they would see fruits of their plan. It didn't begin well. His first deal was to trade 2021 championship winning point guard Drew Holiday, basically for Nerlens Noel, a certified bust that no longer plays for the team. That followed with drafting Michael Carter-Williams, who became a bust as well, even though he was promising early and just fell off a cliff. The team started tanking for better draft picks and got lucky in 2014, taking Joel Embiid number 3 overall. Embiid became a viable superstar in the league, although missed his first 2 years injured. More luck came in 2016 when they took Ben Simmons number 1 overall